Welcome to the Deep Dive. We jump straight into interesting topics using the sources you provide, aiming to get you the key info, well, quickly and thoroughly.
Glad to be here.
Today we're diving into Casus Belli, thrusting your players into the heart of fantasy warfare. It's a fan-made supplement for fantasy role-playing games.
Right. And even if you listening aren't a tabletop gamer yourself, it's actually pretty fascinating how it frames these huge battles, how individual actions can still count in these massive events.
Yeah, like those epic scenes. Helm's Deep, Battle of the Bastards, Pelennor Fields. This tries to capture that feeling.
Exactly. We've got some excerpts here, and the cool thing is how it tackles bringing those huge fights to the table without getting totally bogged down in complicated war game rules. The focus stays on the heroes.
Okay, so that's the core problem, right?
Yeah.
You've got these epic fantasy battles in books and movies, but RPGs usually focus on just a few characters. How does Casus Belli actually bridge that, make it personal?
Well, its whole philosophy is about the feeling of being there, the mud, the blood, the glory, as they say. It emphasizes capturing that visceral experience.
Oh, okay.
And it wants to create moments where, like, a well-placed arrow from a player, or a rallying cry, or some desperate charge that it actually matters to the bigger picture.
So it's less about pushing miniatures around a grid and more about those kind of cinematic, heroic moments within the chaos.
Precisely. Casus Belli is pretty upfront that it's not about super precise troop movements or complex simulations. I mean, you can add that stuff if you want, but it's not the main goal.
The main goal is
generating memorable stories,
Yeah.
where the players, your characters, get to shine, have those defining moments, even when surrounded by thousands. It avoids that impersonal feeling massive battles can sometimes have.
Right, delivering epic scope but keeping it streamlined and player-focused. So the supplement makes some core promises to achieve this. What are they?
Yeah, there are 5. First, keep players at the center. That's key.
Makes sense.
Second, maintain speed and drama. Keep things moving. Third, create memorable stories. That's the output, really.
Okay.
Fourth, remain flexible. It should work with, any campaign setting or GM style. And fifth, stay true to 5e, meaning it builds on the existing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rules.
Those sound like solid goals. Keeping the game flowing, making players feel like they matter even in a huge army. So how does it do that? It mentions 3 key elements.
Right. The first big one is the plot armor system.
Plot armor, like in stories where the hero just can't seem to die.
Sort of. But here it's a limited resource. It represents destiny, luck, skill, narrative importance, all that stuff rolled into one. Each character gets a pool of plot armor points equal to their level, capped at 20.
Okay, a limited pool of heroic luck. How do players use these points?
They can spend 1 point to do several things. Negate damage from an attack, automatically succeed on a saving throw or a skill check, though not against, the main villain usually.
Ah, okay. Sensible limitation.
Perform a special act of war, which is tied to their battlefield role, we'll get to that, or activate certain powerful class abilities.
And there's narrative aspect too.
Yeah, they really encourage players to describe how they're using it. Not just, I spend plot armor, but as the arrow flies towards me, I twist at the last second, the shaft just scraping my pauldron. It fuels the storytelling.
Nice. So it's a mechanic and a story prompt. Okay, what's the second key element?
Second are battlefield roles. These are kind of like specialized jobs characters can take on during the battle. Defines how they mainly contribute.
And what are these roles?
There are 5 main ones listed: commander, tactical ranged, sapper, scout, and support.
Okay, can you give us a quick sense of each?
Sure. Commanders, they lead and inspire units. Tactical ranged are your archers, crossbow users, artillery mages focusing fire. Sappers are about disruption, undermining walls, sabotage, creating obstacles. Scouts gather intel, spot enemy movements, guide allies, and support focus on healing, protecting key figures, maybe magical buffs. Characters usually pick a role that fits their skills,
Wow.
A fighter might be a commander, a rogue, maybe a sapper or scout.
So it channels their existing strengths into the larger battle structure. Makes sense. And the third element?
The third is battle resolution. This is the system for figuring out how the overall battle is going, who's winning, without tracking every single soldier.
Okay, the big picture stuff.
Exactly. It uses the idea of units, which are abstract groups of about 20 troops. Each unit has an experience rating from 1 to 5, showing how good they are.
And how is the winner decided?
Usually it's about earning victory points. The first side to get 20 VP wins. You get VP from player actions, those acts of war we mentioned often grant VP, and also hourly contributions from your units, plus controlling important strategic points on the battlefield.
So players do heroic stuff, contributing points directly, while the background simulation with the units is also ticking along, generating points and resolving.
Precisely. There are also options for objective-based victory, like if the players manage to destroy the enemy's siege weapon, maybe the battle ends immediately. And there's a simple morale system, too.
Morale.
Yeah, if an army loses too many units, they have to make a route check. Fail that, and the army breaks and runs. Automatic loss. It keeps things feeling dynamic and not just a pure attrition grind.
Yeah, that sounds like it hits a good balance. Structure, but keeping it, well, concise and dramatic. The supplement also has advice, right? For players and the game master.
It does. For players, the key things are understand your battlefield role and how you can contribute. Plan your big heroic moments because plot armor is limited.
Right, can't just rely on it constantly.
Exactly. Embrace the chaos, things will go wrong. Describe your actions cinematically, lean into that plot armor description thing. And, importantly, try to connect your personal character goals to what's happening in the battle. Makes it more meaningful.
Good tips for players to make the most of it. And for the game master, the person running the game.
For GMs, it's about setting the stage effectively, describing the scale and the chaos, balancing the zoom level, showing the sweeping battle, then focusing back on the heroes, creating meaningful choices for the players within that chaos.
Not just having them react.
Right. Keeping the pace up, making sure the battle moves forward, and finally, making victory or defeat actually feel significant, like it has consequences.
Hammers home that idea, keeping things concise and focused on the important parts, the player experience, and the narrative impact.
Exactly. Nail on the head.
And like we said at the start, even if you listening don't play these kinds of games, the principles here are pretty interesting, focusing on individual impact within massive events, understanding the structure of conflict. That applies in a lot of places.
It really does. It makes you think about the battlefields in your own life, you know? Professional challenges, personal struggles. How do individual actions, strategic thinking, and even your own plot armor, your resilience, your skills, your support network, how do they come into play?
That's a great takeaway. Consider your own heroic moments within the larger things you navigate. And hey, if this sparked your curiosity, maybe check out tabletop role-playing games and the creative ways they tell stories.
Worth exploring.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.